There you go, go ahead.
Do you want me to read?
No,
All set?
I'll do it. Lisa, do it.
Okay. All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7:01. I want to remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded for television. And David, could you give us roll call, please?
Yes, members present tonight are Lisa Hurd, Mary Taggart, Joe Leggett, Kenny Baptiste, Jim Smith, and Robert Lassen.
Thank you. Okay, first on the agenda, it'll be continued hearing for a notice of intent for Greg Glavin, brewer, Onset Bay Marina, care of CMG Environmental Incorporated. Come on, I'm talking into it. Okay, identify yourself for the record, please, and then
Greg
David will,
Glavin, Onset Bay Marina.
David will highlight.
This was
That's a revised one, this is the original, if you want to look at it.
Okay, this project site is on Green Street in Onset, and the project involves the installation of an above-ground fuel storage tank, the installation of new underground fuel lines, and the removal of existing underground fuel storage tanks at this site, which is within a coastal flood zone. 3 existing 6,000-gallon fuel tanks are to be removed and taken off-site, and a new 18,000-gallon above-ground fuel storage tank is proposed, and this is within coastal flood zone AE elevation 16. A concrete pad approximately 16 by 40 feet in length is proposed to be installed, and the 18,000-gallon tank would be situated on that pad. And again, this is in flood zone AE elevation 16. Also proposed is the installation of approximately 400 feet of new underground fuel lines, which would go from the new tank location down to the existing docks. This work is entirely within the existing paved or altered area of the property. There will be some minor grade changes around the proposed concrete pad area. We do have a revised plan in front of us tonight, which changes the location of the fuel tank from its original location, which was up by Green Street, to now being on the side of their existing storage building, which is further away from the street. We do have a DEP file number for this project, and so I would recommend that this project be approved based on the revised plan that we have in front of us tonight, with the standard conditions and the conditions that also that this is done in accordance with all other applicable laws that need to be attended to and inspection by the fire department.
Do you have anything to add?
Just last time I was in front of you, we just moved the location to work with the neighbors. And I don't think any are here tonight. Nope, so I guess we did a good job.
Okay. Questions from the board? Jim? Yeah. Rob?
No, I haven't.
Jim? Rob? Joe?
No, I have no questions. You've already contacted the fire department anyways, right?
The fire department has a separate filing, fire marshal.
Yeah.
So that, yes.
Yeah, because this is heavily regulated, so I imagine you know the hoops to go through.
Yep.
Okay, nothing else. Mary?
No.
Elisa?
None.
Anybody in the audience? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to close?
Joe's motion, seconded by Mary. All those in favor? Opposed, abstentions? Further motion?
Conditions? in addition of following all the other regulatory committees and boards and stuff like that, whatever you have to do, like with the fire department and stuff.
Second.
Okay, Joe's motion, seconded by Mary. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Thank you very much. Have a
That's
good
the
night.
record, I'd say, in 30 years, huh?
Yep. Okay, have a good night.
I don't know which one's which here.
Okay, I'll sort them out.
That's the new one? That's the new one?
Yeah. Anybody here for the RDA for Frank O'Brien? They've requested a continuance till June 20th.
So moved?
Second.
Joe's motion, seconded by Elisa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Thank you.
Hold that thought.
Anybody get a chance to go over the minutes for January 3rd, 2018?
Looked good as far as I saw.
I wasn't here that day, so.
Take a motion.
Motion approved the minutes?
Second?
Joe's motion, seconded by Rob. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Thank you. That,
Yell at me.
it's been a long day. That was the only one we had.
What's this?
Okay. Well, I guess we jump into enforcement orders.
Oh, my pay doubled.
Ken Keegan, 35 East Boulevard. Can you come up to the table, identify yourself for the record, please?
Kenneth, 35 East Boulevard.
Thank you. David will highlight.
Okay, so again, the site is at 35 East Boulevard, and we issued an enforcement order to Mr. Keegan for work that was conducted at this site in Onset, which involved the placement of stone riprap along an eroding coastal bank and also within a coastal flood zone at this location. Some gray riprap stone was dumped over the edge of the coastal bank at this site in an effort to prevent erosion of the property. And so this work was not something that was permitted by the commission and really was not done in a manner that was appropriate for the area and for what was being attempted to be accomplished there. So I contacted the owner and informed him that he would have to cease and desist from any further activity and have an engineer design to construct or propose a design for what he's trying to accomplish there. He has since been in touch with an engineer to address the design and the proper permitting for the work at this location. In my opinion, the stone that was placed there is going to have to be removed from the area, and some temporary stabilization should be put in place in the time being until such time that we get a filing in front of us with an appropriate design. So again, no further work should occur at this point until an order of conditions has been issued, with the exception of removing the stone from the coastal bank, if the commission's comfortable with that, and installing erosion control at the site. I also think the commission should impose a time frame as to how long the owner would have to file a notice of intent application, just so this doesn't carry on for 6 months or whatever. But I did, as I said, speak with the owner. He understands now the nature of what occurred there. He's not somebody that's done work around coastal properties, and has agreed to try to get this thing permitted properly.
Do you have anything to add?
So I've contacted an engineer to design it. I haven't officially hired them. I've hired them on verbal. I just haven't paid them yet, so technically I haven't hired them yet. I spoke with them today. They're just drafting up a contract to actually do it, where they're going to try to move forward. I apologize, I don't know the right wording, but to design and help me get the permitting to put the wall in properly. Now, on removing the stones, I can remove them, but the erosion and how fast it's eroding is a concern. I don't know how else we'd be able to hold it back. I'm interested in any kind of recommendations. I mean, whatever you guys really suggest, I'm in agreeance. Yeah, I just want to be cooperative. I wish I could have had the engineering company out here with me today. They're a little more experienced on being able to help me move this issue forward, but they just weren't able to move that fast for me. So I'm hoping that maybe we can continue this for maybe a few weeks until I can get them in here with some sort of plans. I plan on getting this done sooner than later. So if you want to put any sort of timeline on it, I want to get it done. As since this winter, we lost at least 3 feet of land. It's eroding. Now it's not eroding because I have the riprap, but it's a problem that I need to have addressed and legally through. So I really just, that's it.
Okay. Questions from the board? Rob?
How will the riprap be removed?
I mean, I'd really, personally, in my opinion, I'd like not to remove it. I'd like to keep it until we actually build the new wall. So when the new wall comes, I'd like to keep the riprap that's there to fight against any further erosion. And then when we come in to actually build it, after we get all the EPA licenses and approval from you guys, either use that as fill in the land or remove it off-site then. But for the time being, I'd like to seek approval to keep it there.
How did you get the riprap in there? Did you just dump it?
Yeah, and I was placing it, but I didn't want to make it look, I didn't want to do anything else. So once I met Dave, I stopped. So I didn't want to go. Once I knew there was an issue, I didn't want to push anymore. I didn't want to start any more issues. I do run a landscape construction company, so I do have means of doing things.
You have your own equipment?
Yeah, so, and help, so I can, whatever you guys decide, I'll do. But I'd like to seek permission to leave it with the promise that I'm gonna work with the engineering company to get everything permitted properly, get a plan in front of you guys, and try to have a construction date whenever the soonest is possible, which from my understanding is not a quick thing. So,
How soon do you think you can have it under contract to actually do something?
the construction part isn't really a worry for me. One of my largest clients, he's a big developer. I spoke to him and he can have, he's built seawalls, but the part that I'm unexperienced in is this part, and the planning and the engineering. So I need somebody right here to kind of guide me in the right direction. Not gonna lie, I really don't know what to say. I'm more nervous up here than anything. I don't really.
Yeah, so as far as working with the engineer, do you envision that, you'll get a proposal fairly quickly and be able to
I
sign on?
already have the proposal and I've already signed it. They
Okay.
just haven't cashed my check. And
Oh,
so,
okay.
so
you're-
it's Brendan's just very busy, and so it's kind of like he's not in the office kind of thing.
Right.
Not to throw him under the bus, but he's just, I'm trying to, I'm gonna have him have his retainer paid this week, and then I'm assuming that it's off to the races, and just he'll do his. I don't know. I don't know what the first step is. He'll get going.
Yeah, so I would suggest that if this is going to come together in the fairly near future, then it would be potentially okay to leave the stone. The stone's going to have to come out anyway at some point, because the way it's there is not appropriate, and they're going to have to reconstruct the whole thing and start from scratch. So all that's going to have to come out
Come up
at some
Yeah,
point.
I understand.
But if it's going to be permitted fairly quickly, then, then I don't mind it staying there. One thing to be aware of is you say it's not eroding as much now, which that may be the case, but the way it's done in terms of the stone being dumped there, depending on what happens there weather-wise, that stone being there can actually accelerate the erosion of that bank. And so, saying you want to leave it, in your mind thinking it's going to maintain the bank, it may actually make it worse.
Right. I understand.
So the best thing we can do is to try to get it permitted quickly so that a proper design is in place, and then he can proceed with it.
Okay. Joe?
Dave, is 2 weeks sufficient time to get paperwork going and get green cards back in for abutters for a notice?
Probably not 2 weeks, because they haven't even gone out and done a survey and started designing the plan yet. So that's 2 weeks is not going to be enough time.
All right.
Talking more like
July
30 days to 60 days by the time,
Yeah.
well, 30 to 45 days give them enough time to get in there, get a plan done, and get it submitted to us. I'm thinking that's about the time frame you're looking at.
If you can give me 30 days officially, but I'll keep coming to these conservation meetings with updates I can show you guys. I promise I'll keep coming every other week. I'm not afraid to devote my time. I just, I'm gonna get right onto Bracken Engineering and try to push this to get done. The fastest this is done, the
Well,
faster I'm comfortable.
I think if we give you 30 days to get it pulled together, you don't have to come every week.
Yeah, I mean, either way, I don't,
You just keep in contact with Dave and his office.
Yeah.
yeah.
Mary?
Lisa?
I do. I think Rob's first question was, what type of equipment are you going to use to remove it, if I'm not mistaken? Because, what kind of machinery will be on the beach? I think that was your
I
question.
don't think there'll be anything on the beach.
Yeah, it was,
That's
that part was
exactly
implied,
right.
but it's, I'm assuming it's been answered by if this process goes quickly, then whoever designs the bank will also, within that design, will have a process for removal of the stone.
And that process
And
should
that
come
would all
before
be-
us, because
Right, that would all
that's
be
something,
okay.
Yeah, that should all be in the notice.
Right.
sounds really easy just to take a big machine down there and pull it out, but it's not quite so
Yeah.
easy.
Well, nothing, I actually had that, I'm sorry.
No,
I
that's
talked
go
over
right
here.
ahead.
I talked too fast, I'm sorry. I actually brought it up with the engineers, and they made a point that they were gonna make a plan for that, and that all work would be done from the grassed area, and nothing can touch the coastal beach, which I do understand that no machinery or gas-powered equipment can be on the coastal beach.
Mhm.
Okay. You good? All right, we can ratify it, right?
Yep.
You need a motion to ratify?
A motion to ratify the enforcement order.
Second.
All right. Joe's motion, Elisa's second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention? Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep in touch with David.
I'm sorry.
Keep in touch with David.
I will. Thank you.
Okay. 96 Realty LLC, 0 Marion Road. Please identify yourself for the record, and David will explain.
My name is Joe Crespi. I represent 96 Realty LLC. My partner, Bob Ahern, he couldn't make it today, but I thought it was important that I attend.
Okay.
Okay, so on this property, which is known as 0 Marion Road, an enforcement order was issued to the owners for work that was conducted at this site in the buffer zone to salt marsh within the riverfront area and within a coastal flood zone. And the work involved the removal of an underground fuel storage tank and cutting vegetation at this site without approval from the commission. An underground fuel storage tank that was estimated to be approximately 625 gallons was removed at this site without permits, which required testing the soils for petroleum products at the time the tank was removed. Vegetation also was cleared at the site very close to the edge of the salt marsh. The property owner has since hired a licensed site professional that did go back and conduct the required soil sampling in the vicinity of where the tank location was to comply with the state requirements. Those results have been submitted to the commission, and you have that in your mail. These results were also forwarded to the Mass Department of Environmental Protection, and I spoke to their representative, and he feels as though the sampling has given him enough information to be comfortable with the fact that there's no hazardous material that needs to be removed from the site. So at this point, in my opinion, we should get an after-the-fact filing for the removal of the tank and to restore the disturbed areas, because again, there was cutting that was done in areas that we would not have approved had somebody come in and requested to do so. So, in my opinion, that's what we should get to restore the disturbed areas.
You have anything to add?
Can I just give you a little color on the whole situation? Because
Go right ahead.
this is the first time I didn't know what a storage tank was until it was brought to my attention by the state of Massachusetts. This property has been earmarked by the local sportsmen's Fish and Game and the state of Massachusetts to, and they approached us to acquire it for the use of the town and riverfront access. So my associate and I, we entered into a purchase and sale with the state to, at a discounted price, as long as, you know, it was a quick process in order to facilitate that, so
Okay,
everybody had usage.
Can you just talk,
In
pull
here.
it down toward you a little bit?
Okay.
Thank you.
Did everybody hear what I had?
Go ahead,
Okay.
yeah.
So in that process, we signed a PNS, and we were moving forward with a gentleman named Ross Kessler. I knew George, Papa George, personally for many, many years, and this had been a sore spot in his, every Friday I would have a glass of wine with George at his house, and he would complain about the dumping that went on, and I didn't pay any attention to it because I really didn't own it. I said, how bad could it be? But for the last 8 years of owning this, I picked up propane tanks, beer cans, chicken, wrappers from Market Basket. I even have the dates on them. Dave was down there when we did the testing, and he thought, oh, those are old, and I said, well, this is dated Wednesday. The propane tanks, baby carriages, car seats, and neighbors have seen me doing this and have thanked me for doing it, but it still continues. We've put up signs. I've contacted the police department, and they said, we can't really patrol it because we can't see it. You know, there's vegetation growing all along the fences. So we entered into this agreement with the state of Massachusetts, Ross Kessler, and he was very anxious to obtain the rights to this property for the good of the town. So we're all in favor for it. I thought my life was back to normal. So he went in there, did his due diligence, and you know, much to my surprise, there was a marina there at one point in time. And there was a tank that was discovered. Now, the state had a diagram, and they hired an LSP to find this. It was truly a great deal of work to find this tank, because if you would have seen the growth over it, it would have been, they had to cut through, get to the tank, get to the area they thought the tank was, and then they had a probe, and they had a process to do it. And, you know, I talked to the LSP, and he said, you know, we did it, but it wasn't easy, and we were, so fast forward, state calls me, we can't buy this property because it has a tank on it. You gotta get rid of this tank. I said, okay, I guess I called we're disappointed, but, you know, we have to get rid of the tank, and you have to do a 21E. I didn't know what a 21E was at the time, but now I'm very skilled with a 21E is. So, we go in there, I hire a gentleman to get rid of the tank, with the state's diagram and the state's markings, and I shared this with Dave and the DEP, and I got rid, and the process, I probably did it backwards, or obviously I'm here, I should have done it another way. And I would have done it the way if I knew the way to do it at the time. But I was reacting to the state's request to get rid of that tank so we could proceed with the process. So I got rid of the tank, hired a licensed professional to do it, hired the LSP to do the testing, and they were out of Barlow's Landing, and the state had used them, so I used the same people that they used at my expense. And we accessed the tank, got rid of the tank, invited everybody to Dave was there at the testing, he saw the testing, and they drilled holes, and speaking too loud or something, but.
No, I don't know what's.
Okay, so the story's almost over. So at the end of the day, they did the testing, the samples were done. It was impressive on how many they had to do and the depth of they're very official. And then they reported back in much, thank goodness, to our satisfaction and the state's satisfaction, the results came in fine. I invited everybody. I went down to the Chris Smith down at the fire department, and you know, he said, we didn't know there was a tank there. So I said, would you like me to pay a fee? And he said, no, we don't need a fee, because we didn't know there was a tank there, but thank you for bringing it to our attention. So it wasn't done, you know, with any intent, or, you know, it was not in the middle of the day. I wasn't there, but I talked to the gentleman who removed it, and he's a licensed excavator. He's been around for years. He said people were thanking him, you know, for actually showing some attention to this. And then at that point in time, Dave sent me this request to come here and explain, give the board some color on what you're trying to do there. So I thought we did the right thing. And now I'm here, and you know, we'd like to proceed with the state. They're interested in it. The Sportsman's Club, gentleman named Paul Johnson, he wants, you know, to proceed with this. So they're moving forward with another test that they want, but it's the final test. And then we hope to enter into a P&S, and they said something about handicap access and, you know, what they want to do, but there's a process that they have to go before Dave and do, and they know the process. And so I had thought that they had spoken to Dave and been with him because they found the tank. I didn't find the tank. So that's all I have to say, and I hope I give you a color for it. And, you know, for everybody who's been in Wareham, there was a marina there, I guess. And it was a big tank.
Yeah.
There's even a little footing of, I showed Dave, dock out there. It's rough footings, but it's a dock space. So I think the state wants the town to have it, and to have it for use, everybody's use, to be able to access the river with kayaks and bird watching and sitting area. And there's 2 curb cuts there, and then there is town water and town sewer, but you'd have to cut across the street to get town sewer. So it's a pretty nice piece of property. We had also talked to GAF, and we had a, you know, plan. I mean, I said to one, I would live there. You know, if it's cleaned up and it's nice and it's nice river access, it's really, there's a house to the right and another house, like 2 houses out there. So I will stop talking, and you can ask me any questions. If I know the answer, I'll be happy to tell you.
Rob? Jim?
One tank. You pulled it out already?
Yep.
Thank you.
Joe?
No questions.
Mary? Lisa? David?
No, I don't have any questions. I would just restate what I said previously, that we should have a filing before this board, and there does need to be some restoration for some of the vegetation clearing that occurred that should not have occurred, so. And I can work with the owners to that, and again, I think the commission should also, again, put a time frame on how quickly we should see an application.
Okay, wish of the board.
So, you got a question, I think?
I'm Paul, could I speak to the commission for a minute?
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Crespi and I have spoken on a number of occasions. The history of this project goes back, as I'm Paul Johnson, president of the Plymouth County League of Sportsmen. I'm also president of the Carver Sportsman's Club. There are 5 sportsman's clubs in the vicinity of this property. Fin Fern Feather of Mattapoisett, Plymouth Rod and Gun, Carver, Wankinko Rod and Gun, and there's one other one. Sippicam. Thank you. The general public has a big vested interest in keeping this property in the hands of the state of Massachusetts. We've been in regular communication with Marine Fisheries, Ross Kessler. We've sent letters to his boss asking them to do what they can to remove any remaining impediments to this property getting into the hands of Marine Fisheries. Anything we do that delays that process in the current environment that we're in, where the heating up of commercial interests is gonna negatively impact our ability to get this done in the long term. This is a great property for car top access and things like that. Wareham already has in place, we voted a year ago for a management agreement to maintain the property. We would like to see whatever you can do. We would like to urge you to do whatever you can do to be cooperative and move this process along so that we can get it into the hands of Marine Fisheries sooner rather than later, so that we don't incur any other. I mean, we've been fighting for this in Plymouth County League for over 15 years. We would love to see this property in the hands of the general public. I mean, it's not just fishermen, waterfowlers, it's everybody. It's the kayakers, the canoers, the people that, would have access to that river to be a great property to have. Not only that, but if you consider it's going to take another piece of property out of the realm of the commercial development right along our coast. It's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, as far as that goes, it just does need to be made clear that whatever is proposed there, if it doesn't meet the wetlands regulations, then it's not going to get approved.
Right.
So that just needs to be made clear. While a lot of people may want it and may think it's a great thing for access, it doesn't mean it's going to meet the wetland standards and therefore may not be approved for that.
Right.
So you just need to have that in your mind as well.
We've been in discussion with Marine Fisheries, and they wouldn't be interested in it if the use was inappropriate, I'm sure.
Well,
But that's up to them once they get it.
Right, and the wetland regs are different than marine fishery interests, so they're not always clear on what the regulations allow and don't allow. So I've had this discussion with Ross, and so he's conscious of it. So what I'm trying to get at is, don't think this is going to be a done deal just because everybody wants it.
Right. We're interested in incremental progress here. That would be,
Yeah.
that would be our interest. Our vested interest is keep driving this project forward, see if we can't get something workable going.
Right. Okay, I just wanted to make
Thank
the
you.
point.
I appreciate your
Yeah.
comment.
Just to add on top of that, it is going forward because Ross, the LSP told me that he had already made a proposal to finish what should have been finished today, and Ross has taken it to his boss in order to, and they're very open to it now because the tank is gone.
Right.
So I appreciate Paul coming to speak on the behalf, and, we just would like to see it go in the right place, which we started with at the beginning.
Yep, get in hands of the general public, it's a win.
Okay.
So again, I still think you do need to require that, put a time frame on it.
Yeah, at hand right now is the enforcement order. What's planned for later has to be filed. In regards to the enforcement order, I guess it's the owner's responsibility now to comply with the regulations, and repairs that have to be made to the vegetation or whatever. So,
Along those lines, can I just add that if it goes forward, and the only things that I was aware of, I was told it was invasive species that were there. I mean, am I supposed to put back invasive species where they were taken away, or do I replace it? And I was just asked to table, I mean, we'll do whatever the committee requires, but I was just feeling that if the progress moves forward and there is a plan proposed by the state, and then it gets approved, we could be in the face of putting it in and then just taking it out. So,
Well, that's the point I'm making, is the areas where clearing occurred and where somebody may want to propose work is probably not going to get approved in the areas that I'm talking about that has to be restored. So
Okay.
the areas that I'm describing, I'm not going to talk about planting all the way up to the road. That's
Right.
not what I'm getting at. But
Okay.
the areas near the marsh, that
Okay.
regardless of what the state proposes, would not be approved to clear that area.
invasive or not?
Well, they could get an approval to remove an invasive species and replant with appropriate species
Okay.
if they wish to do that.
Right.
But in this case, where you've kind of cleared in some areas that shouldn't have been cleared, and it may have been invasive species, we would want you to replant non-invasive species back there just to reestablish the vegetation,
Okay.
so.
All right, and how long does this, I mean, Dave, you were telling me prior that there is a, I mean, will you tell me, guide me on what I
Oh,
should be
sure,
doing? Okay.
yeah.
all right,
All right,
so
I'll be in touch with you then.
from the board, we need a time frame.
Ratify the enforcement.
We gotta ratify this also.
Make a motion to ratify this enforcement order. Gonna want you to actually put in after-the-fact filing
Okay.
for what the work you've already done.
Do I pick up an application here tonight?
He'll
on that?
talk,
Oh,
No,
okay.
all right, let's get this through. This is just for the rest, the enforcement order. Okay, restoration of the cleared air vegetation you already got there. Talk to Dave, he'll guide you on that. There's no need to be here at a meeting discussing this. And I'm gonna seek a $300 fine, which is the max I can do, because that's a very sensitive area, and you can toss a stone into the water. You call conservation, okay? And that's what I would
That's
suggest.
your motion.
That's my motion.
Second, Joe's motion, seconded by Mary. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. That's where it's at. Get in contact with David, and David will explain what you need to do.
I have them on speed dial.
Okay.
Talk frequently.
All right, thank you. Russell
Green.
Crean, 24 Old Glen Charlie Road. Come up to the table, identify yourself for the record, and David will highlight.
Russell Crean from 24 Old Glen Charlie Road.
Thank you. David?
So, in this case, again, an enforcement order was issued for work that was conducted at 24 Old Glen Charlie Road that involved the construction of a retaining wall along the inland bank at the site, which is on Agawam Mill Pond. And again, this was not something that was approved by the commission. The wooden retaining wall is approximately 15 feet in length and is approximately 2 feet high. And this was done in an effort to control erosion at the site. The owner did also mention wanting to put a dock at the property when I met with him there. There is currently a dock at the site, which is run down a bit and needs repair. And after we discussed the situation, it was decided that it would be best to submit an application and seek approval to repair the existing dock and to propose to add some length to it instead of trying to seek approval for another dock in a different location at the site. So a notice of intent should be filed to propose upgrades to the dock, And this would also include the removal of the wooden retaining wall and a plan to stabilize the bank in a more appropriate way with plantings versus constructing a wall along that area. So again, Mr. Crean is relatively new to this property, has not dealt with waterfront property before. So when I met with him at the site, we discussed some of the issues, and he was cooperative and stated that he would go through the appropriate steps that are needed in order to comply with the wetland regs for this site. So we discussed the process a bit, and so, as I said, a notice of intent needs to be submitted so we can get this on the right track.
You have anything to add?
No, we had a real good conversation walking around, because we only bought the house 2 months ago. And I've been pulling tires out of the water and trash can lids and debris. And so I thought that I could just throw a couple of ties, near the edge of the water, and that would solve some of the problem. The people just haven't maintained the place. So I've stopped. I haven't done anything else. They're still sitting there. David said, don't take them apart yet. Wait till the meeting. And that's it. They're just sitting there and waiting for the meeting.
Okay. Rob?
All set?
Jim? Joe?
I'm all set.
Mary? Elisa?
No questions.
Nobody out in the audience? All right.
So again, I just think the same scenario, we'll just ask that something be submitted within a reasonable time frame so that we can get the process going appropriately.
So I can apply for the repairing of the existing dock like we spoke of?
Right.
Okay.
And also that plan would include the removal of the retaining wall and then a plant to plant it, as we discussed, with
Yeah.
native plants.
The ones that you guys have a list of that are approved and everything?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so can I, do I leave the railroad ties for now until I get the thing to you? Or do I just
Yes.
unscrew them? Because I only screwed them together.
Yeah, let's wait till you get the application submitted so the commission reviews it and approves it, and
Okay.
then you can do all that all at once.
Okay.
Include everything that you want to do there.
All right.
Okay, I need a motion.
Okay, a motion ratify the enforcement order. Have them go for, submit a notice of intent with the complete plans for doing the dock repair,
Okay.
the retaining wall, and any other work that you're gonna have.
If I can repair the dock, I won't bother with the retaining wall. That'll just come out,
Okay.
and then we can do
I think
vegetation on that
I think
side.
Dave would
Station.
like that a little bit better.
Yeah. It's just the dock leans a little bit to one side.
Okay, and I'd like to have you get going on that so you get it done within 30 days, which would bring us,
Yeah, no, I waited till the meeting, and I told Dave I was gonna come in and get a permit, and then I just figured I'd wait till the meeting and
okay.
see how it went. So now I'll just come down to the office and get one.
Okay.
Probably Monday. You guys are closed tomorrow.
Okay,
Well, we're
Joe's,
open tomorrow,
What?
not open Friday.
Oh,
Not
tomorrow's
open Fridays, yeah.
Tomorrow's Friday. Oh, okay. So you're open tomorrow. All right.
Joe's motion, seconded by Mary. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Try to keep the next one in
Yeah.
topic.
Tyhonet Homeowners Association. Somebody here to represent them? Come up to the table, identify yourself for the record, and then David will highlight.
Good evening, I'm David McClure, the president of the Homeowners Association.
And I'm Deborah Norcross, the VP trustee for the Homeowners Association.
Wendy O'Brien, treasurer for the Homeowners Association.
Okay, David?
So, again, an enforcement order was issued to the Tyhonet Pond South Homeowners Association for violations at property that they are common owners of within this subdivision. So activities were conducted within the buffer zone to the bordering vegetated wetland, along Tyhonet Pond, again on the common property owned by the association. And some of this work including cutting of vegetation, creating clearings, the installation of an irrigation pump, things like that along the edge of the pond. These activities were not permitted by the Conservation Commission. I had met out there on a couple of occasions with several property owners within the association to discuss activities on the homeowner association property adjacent to their individual lots. So it's my recommendation that no further clearing or construction activities be conducted at the area within the buffer zone to the pond or to the wetlands unless the property owners or the association seek the proper approvals from the Conservation Commission. And further, that the alterations that have been done, some of those need to be corrected or restored. This would mean planting vegetation in certain areas of more significant alteration within the buffer zone, the removal of the irrigation pump, things of that nature that we probably would not have permitted had they come before us and requested it. Also, with the understanding from the association as a whole that if they do want to propose work within the buffer zone, that they do need to file an application, get the commission's approval, and then there are things that can be permitted. It's just the normal, proper process has to be followed, that's all. And again, some of you have already heard this discussion who have met with me directly.
And we have, and I think this came to a light because of one of our homeowners invited David to come to his property, and David had marked, some trees were marked about, could I cut this tree down, could I not cut this tree? Some were broken, some were dead, and that was a learning experience for all of us. We truly were not aware of the various buffer zones and that sort of thing, so with full intention, we will comply with what you have. And in the future, ask David.
Okay.
Phone calls are cheap.
Sorry, sir?
Phone calls are cheap.
Oh, yes, and visits were made, yes.
Questions?
I have none.
Mary?
No question.
Elisa?
No.
Anybody in the public wish to speak on wetlands issues only, please? Thank you.
Yes.
Would you come up to the table and speak into the mic? Identify yourself, please.
Yes, if it pleases the board, my name is Jim Dugan. I live at 19 Red Pine Lane with my wife Karen. Unfortunately, due to health reasons, she was not able to be here this evening, so she would like me to speak for her as well. We were lucky enough to have Dave come out to our property, as several other residents did. We found some spare time that he had to come out and give us some direction and view the property. As was already stated, you know, we've had a terrible winter with severe damage to a lot of trees, and our interest at that time was to clear some of those damaged trees and do that appropriately. Dave was very nice to come out and describe how to proceed with some of that work, and looked at some of the trees that were just snapped in half and dead and could be removed. And there were others that would probably support some of the wildlife in the area, woodpeckers and so on and so forth, asked us to leave those. So we want to work with Dave, certainly speaking specifically to our property. Dave did cite that there could be a need for some replanting, and whatever plans or requirements that he sets forth for those, we're certainly willing to proceed with that and bring that back to whatever requirement that you might have. The concerning thing here is that many of the neighbors throughout the neighborhood and residents may not have known, but were also directed by a memo from one of the persons on the board to go ahead and do whatever work you wanted to do, and he had received information from Dave that you could see him after the fact. That's one of the reasons that we contacted Dave and brought him down there, because we knew that that was just going to get somebody in trouble. Major things have been done, major grievances. Hydraulically powered equipment has been brought in to trim trees, to move soil, to build beaches, things of that nature. So we're very concerned about that. We'd like to keep our beautiful neighborhood as natural and as safe and not do things that are outside the parameters. Certainly follow the directions of the board, and anything that either Dave or the board requires, again, speaking to my specific property, we're more than willing to cooperate and bring that to the end that you request. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just to follow up or finish, since discussions I've had with various members of the board, I think everybody in the association now has a much better sense of what is allowed and what requires permitting and so on and so forth. And I would say that I'll work with individual owners to address the situations on their own individual properties. But it also needs to be clear, and I think it is clear now to, again, people that I've spoken to, that the association as a whole is going to be responsible for potential violations and/or fines that would result out of potential violations. So everybody just needs to be aware that it's not necessarily one individual, but the association that's going to be addressed, because the association is the owner of that land. So I just wanted to make that point formally. So, but other than that, I don't have any further comments. We've discussed most of the issues, and I think everybody knows where things need to go from here.
I'm just curious, as a part of the board, just so that we do have, the trustees do have a clear understanding as far as, and I know, Dave, you looked at numerous properties throughout that, the particular open space and area closest to the pond. Is there anything documented by way of what areas are the areas of concern specifically that we need to be addressing, and to bring back and restore any vegetation or trees or things of that nature, so that we have a good idea as a whole, since, you know, it is the entire HOA as opposed to specific property owners, so that we can all work in unity and make sure that that is enforced and complied with.
Right, I don't necessarily have a formal layout of each location at this point. That's something I'm going to have to meet with the association with and kind of go over that after this meeting.
Okay.
So at this point, I don't have that 100% ironed out.
Okay,
But I have a general sense of some areas that are going to have to be addressed.
That's great. So maybe we could have you come to a meeting, and at
Right.
that point, we can, I think that's a great
that'd be
idea.
fine.
Thank you.
She actually asked the same question. I just wanted to know if we were going to be notified of who needed to replant.
Yeah, at some point, we can meet as a group if that's what the group would like, and I can, you know, we can walk those areas and go over that in detail.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right?
Questions from anybody on the board?
Just need to
I already
ratify.
asked, didn't I?
You did. Okay. Just make a motion that we ratify the enforcement order and that the irrigation pump be pulled within 2 weeks. Call Dave's office when that's pulled. No more work done in the buffer zone at all. And any places that's been disturbed where the plantings won't naturally come back up by themselves, we're gonna have to see that the replanting's done in those areas. Dave will guide you on that. And anytime you guys plan on doing any kind of work out there, just seek input for conservation.
Now we know.
Just a phone call.
Yeah.
That's all. And that's my motion.
Okay. Joe's motion, seconded by Mary. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe you're.
David Andrade?
Oh, that's homeowners, they're going. I'm sure they're fighting.
I know you guys, but you have to identify yourself for the record. And then Dave,
William Andrade.
okay, and David will highlight, go from there.
Okay, okay, so there was an enforcement order issued for work conducted at what is known as 0 Depot Street, Lot 1082. And this work involved clearing land in the buffer zone to wetland and also within a coastal flood zone without the approval of the Conservation Commission. So significant clearing occurred at this property, which resulted in alteration of vegetation right up to the edge of the wetland. An enforcement order was issued with a cease and desist at the site, but there has been some work that has continued at the site in terms of bringing in additional piles of fill and other material to the site. So I'm curious what the story is with that. So there really should be no further activity at the site until such time that the owners come in with a notice of intent to address the violation and to try to permit any work that they would like to do at the site that is within either the buffer zone or the flood zone that exists on that property. So that's really where things are at right now. There's going to have to be a notice of intent submitted to restore some of the disturbed area that we would not have allowed work to take place in, and to try to permit any other work in the area that we potentially can permit work in that needs to have an approval from the commission.
You have anything to say? Go ahead.
Yes, as far as doing work outside of the buffer zone, I mean, we've been on that lot for 25 years, probably longer than that, for 30 years.
Not with the new work that's been done. I mean, you guys cleared that whole thing.
I understand that, but you're saying we're dumping fill on there. The fill is way outside the 100-foot buffer zone.
Right, but you also have flood zone there, and the flood zone extends way beyond where the 100-foot buffer zone line is. So work, whether it's within 100 feet of the wetland or in the flood zone, requires approval from the commission.
Okay.
So at this point, you've done work in both. Maybe you could just explain what your intent is to do there down the road. I know you've mentioned some things to me in the past about maybe building a building there or something. Just kind of go over those details.
Well, we're looking to move our operations in that area.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we do site construction, asphalt paving. So just basically moving our equipment over there for now. Eventually, we may do another business there.
All right.
If I can speak up a little bit on the history of that property, going back to 1995, I had that whole property appraised because I was purchasing it through Mr. Casey and his wife Elizabeth. And unfortunately, Mr. Casey was on the process of disputing that wetland area for the simple reason, if you look at that piece of property we're talking about, lot 1065, is surrounded by all homes from Depot Street to Knowles. And on the other side, the land, that lot of land is owned by the Wareham Trust.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to 1930, they had tracks. Railroad tracks went, a spur track went all the way from Old Colony, all the way back to almost to Knowles Avenue. That land was all flat. There was no wetland there.
Mm-hmm.
The wetland developed after J.F. White Construction Company came in there, and they removed material out of there to compensate for lot 1081 that was partially contaminated by the fuel tanks. So this is how the wetland became from runoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, Mr. Casey died before this transaction took place. So just to let you know that I've been around quite some time.
Yeah. So at this stage, you know, the fact is that it is wetlands now. I
It is,
mean,
bu-
so,
bu- But we have an attorney looking at it to see if that can be reversed.
good luck with that.
I know. It might take forever.
Yeah, no, so the,
But we're willing to do whatever
right.
you know.
So this,
We will submit
sure.
to you and the board what our intent is,
Mhm.
but we're looking at different things that we can do with the property.
Right,
We might go with a 40B. I don't know.
right,
But right now, it's questionable that we like to bring our equipment over to the land, and we're working off of the existing material that we have there now, which is in any of these lots.
right. So as far as that particular site goes, you have a wetland there, and the regulations that are in place right now don't allow any work within 50 feet of that. So, but right now, you've cleared basically right up to the edge of it.
Well, what happened there, unfortunately, I know I wasn't there at the time they were clearing, but we did put flags up. And there were some trees that were already down from the storm,
Most of them are.
quite a few of them. And so what they did, they pulled them out and they cleared it.
Yeah, so if that was the case, then again, they should have come into us, they should have talked to us, explained what they wanted to do, we would have went over what was okay, what wasn't okay.
Well, that's our fault.
Yeah, so at this stage, what we're just trying to do is get you permitted properly for the site. And so, because you had a wetland there and you had a 50-foot no-activity zone that should have been left, you're going to ultimately have to replant that area and bring that back to vegetation again, you know?
Well, basically, most of them, we call it the wild rhubarb. There's plenty of that around. And you can walk that whole area, it's dry.
Well, yeah, it may be,
Yeah.
right. I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying 50 feet away from the edge of the wetland is supposed to be left untouched, you know?
Yeah,
And so that's going to have to be restored because it
All right.
basically was wiped out.
We'll do that.
So again, a notice of intent should be submitted, and that should include restoration of the area that was altered, and whatever other things you want to do outside the 50-foot should be reflected on that plan, and
Mhm.
then we'll go through the permitting and get it straight.
Okay. That's fine.
Questions?
No.
Rob? Jim? Joe?
No questions.
Mary?
No.
Elisa? Anybody in the public? No?
Again, I'd do the same thing, ratify and
Yeah.
the time frame.
Same scenario.
Yeah, and this is gonna be in a notice, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, I make a motion that we ratify the enforcement order and have these people do an after-the-fact notice of intent filing that will include the restoration of the stuff that was actually taken in the 50-foot buffer zone and anything else that you plan on doing onto the property.
Second,
All right. Joe's motion, seconded by Mary, or
it's fine.
Elisa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Yeah, and in the meantime, you really should have some hay bales or something along that edge, just to,
Well, we was going to put some filter barrier around.
yeah.
There
Some,
was
some,
some already there that was
Yeah.
wiped out.
yeah, I saw some
Guys
remnants
saw
of
it,
it,
yeah.
yeah.
So
So
go-
we'll put some in the
we'll
same
put some-
area.
Okay.
Yeah, basically right along the edge of the wetland.
Yeah.
There's some wetland flags that you could see right along the edge that the
Right.
former guy who did the flagging must have put there, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just let me know when that's done, and I can go down and take a look at it.
Just be in contact with him.
Okay, good.
All right,
Good
thank
night.
you.
Thank you.
I forgot they had a time frame on that one.
Oh,
I didn't recognize you.
that's all right, I just
I
read
know
it.
what it is.
Still need a stump.
Okay,
There you go.
I'll be down that way.
Okay.
I forgot.
That's okay. Sandy will slap you when you come back, when she comes back.
She'll be back.
Okay.
Holding the cats hostage.
Certificate of compliance for Okay. Philip Asti, 30 Maritime Drive.
This project was for a septic upgrade at this location at 30 Maritime Drive. The project has been completed according to the order of conditions that was issued, so I would recommend the issuance of the certificate of compliance for this project.
So moved.
Joe's motion, seconded by Mary. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Okay. Certificate of compliance, John Deacon, 6 Burgess Point Road.
This permit was issued for the construction of a single-family house. The project was never commenced, and the order of conditions has since expired. And so the applicant is just seeking to clear up the title on the property by getting a certificate of compliance. So I would recommend issuing the certificate of compliance, stating that the order is no longer valid, and therefore the project cannot commence until a new notice of intent is submitted.
So moved.
Joe's motion, seconded by Mary. All those in favor? Opposed, abstention? Okay, do you have something that you wish to, or are you just observing?
Yes, I observe.
We were part of homeowners association, but we are interested in other topics as well.
Okay. And you're all set?
Yeah, I just
Okay.
had a 30-second question when you're all done.
Okay.
Come up and ask.
Oh, I can wait if you guys.
Yeah.
No, come up and ask.
So, I was given this by the previous owner. I only have one copy, I didn't prepare it, I apologize. I think this is, he put in a request to build 2 retaining walls to, along East Boulevard for the parking. He never actually did it. He, and this part of the house, Dave, when you were there, I buried it. It was like a foot underground, so I unburied it, which leaves a cliff. I'm hoping that I can build a retaining wall and maybe follow the same footstep. I'd like to just go straight across, 1 or 2 feet, just enough so this water, I'm trying to bring it up to grade with the street, so when I park, it's not like down a cliff. And I grade it this way. If he did approve for wood, I'd like to do an endless wall.
Right, so whatever plan that the engineer is gonna design for your seawall, have them include that. Just to tie it all into the whole.
When you file, make sure everything that you want to do is in there, so you only do it once.
Alright, and then the only other question is, when so the yard's a little torn up, there's a lot of dirt. I wanna sow some seed, probably like some rye seed, so it probably germinates quickly. I just need to churn up the dirt a little bit, because it's really compacted. I just don't wanna do that without permission from the board.
I think if it's something that's just done like with a hand rake or something, you could do that, but no machinery. Yeah, until you go through the process. I think if you scatter down some seed, even if it's pretty compacted, and maybe throw some hay on it or something, some of it'll catch in there.
Alright, yeah, I just wanted to
Yeah.
when I unburied the house, it was like buried the house, it was like 2 feet underground. So then it was rotting out all the tenants. I got there and I was flabbergasted, so I unburied it, and now it's like wrong. So I'll include it all in my
Yeah,
plan.
that way it's all contained in the whole plan.
Alright,
Yeah.
I'm sure we're gonna become best friends after all these calls and other maybe years.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, and it's John, right? Joe?
Joe.
Thank you for not giving me a fine. Thank you, guys, have a great night. I'm sure I'll see
Okay.
you soon. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, any other business would be?
July 4th meeting?
July 4th meeting,
Yeah, we're
we
supposed
want to
have
just
a
cancel it?
normal meeting day, so we're not obviously having a meeting.
decided the last time.
General consensus.
Cancel.
Cancel. Okay.
Motion to adjourn if we don't have any bills?
We do not have any bills.
Motion to adjourn, please.
Joe's motion, seconded by Elisa. All those in favor? Am I saying it right now? It took me a whole year. All those in favor? Opposed, abstentions? Thank you.
Opposed?
Nah,
Those
abstain.
would be short.
Okay, all set.